Okay. Hello. Hey, Clive. Yeah. I'm going to give you a shout out in 1 minute.
Teaching area that's ripe for a bit of renovation.
Yeah. It's literally old school. Okay, let's do it. Let's be some punctual help in here. Is Paula back? Take a seat.
Oh, I'm really sure it's okay if it is.
Sure. I'll take 20 minutes, all right?
Okay.
Thanks, Jared. Thank you very much. Wow, I hope this works. Just you and me, bro. All right, let's do it.
I think there's so many people having tea.
Okay. Is there another tea session after 11:40? There's another tea session. All right. We can be a bit liberal in our start time. Camera off. Turn mute microphone. If call, just bandwidth usage. Sure. Oh. Is Peter here?
I haven't seen him.
Chilling up in Typo. Hey, welcome. What's your name?
Hello, I'm Jason. Nice to meet you.
Do you study here at Hong Kong, Jason?
No. I studied in CU.
Oh, Chinese U.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Are you working in a school or?
I'm now working in
The VTC. Oh, great. Lovely. Cool. Awesome. Thanks for coming, Jason. Okay, they're starting. I'm starting. Hey guys, Jason, Clive. My name's David. That's the title of my presentation. I'm going to break down the title for you. What are ego networks? Ego networks are things related to a point of reference. So for example, if I'm the point of reference and we want to know who my friends are, well, we can make an ego network of that. In the same way, for example, in this education faculty, we can know about me by the types of meetings that I attend. All right, so this is an ego network of my meetings, an ego network of my friends. So we can get to know people and their roles through the people that they know and the meetings they attend. So what exactly is a pedagogical technologist? Clive is a pedagogical technologist. And these are an emergent role, and this role supports the pedagogical aspect of teaching through technology. There's not much literature on pedagogical technologists, for which reason I'm doing this exploratory case study. And in this emergent role, why is it important to study? Well, we are in a changing society, and schools must change to reflect this changing society. We have new learning outcomes and new technologies. Maybe these pedagogical technologists are instrumental in facilitating changing learning outcomes and changing teaching and learning practices to help prepare students for a changing society. We also don't know too much about pedagogical technologists. There's a literature deficit. In addition, I take an ecological networks perspective to understanding pedagogical technologists, again, forming ego networks. Not only that, but I don't use a quantitative method. I go from qualitative data to quantitative data, and that really hasn't been done before. So this is my research question. How does a school ecology, I frame a school in terms of ecology, change with the presence of a pedagogical technologist like Clive? How do they co-evolve? So I see the world in a complex way. So it's not just the pedagogical technologist acting on the school, but the school acting on the pedagogical technologist role. It's dialogical in that way. These are some other questions that, again, imply an ecological understanding. What is the pyramid number, or what is the network in the school? What are the interactions with the PT species? So who does the PT interact with? Which school roles, which individuals? And ultimately, what is the impact of having a PT in the school? Okay, this is my working model or my conceptual framework, and it suggests ecology, but also a networks perspective. We can use networks perspective to model ecology. So this is how I see a school ecology. We have organizational units like grade levels and content areas and specialist areas, and they have meetings. At least notionally they have meetings. And these meetings occur within or between or outside of organizational units. We have different roles like teachers, students, parents, specialist teachers who attend these kinds of meetings. And they talk about things. They have ideas, right? So can we trace ideas or innovations from meeting to meeting, through organizational unit, through role, through a school? Theoretical framework, complexity theory. So we're not thinking in terms of simple causality. There are multiple factors that act on the school and also on the pedagogical technologist role. That's why I'm saying, how do they co-evolve? Because a lot of things are changing in the role, but also in the school. So schools can be seen as unpredictable and emergent, self-organizing, and creative. As this was exploratory, I used an iterative, grounded approach. So in fact, I didn't really know what I was doing several years ago when I started the research project. So I ultimately started following interesting leads in the research. And then as I started to analyze and collect more data, I began to be able to articulate and speak clearly what exactly was interesting. So ultimately, I came up with a lot of axial coding to create these ego networks. We can know a pedagogical technologist through the types of roles that they're interacting with, teachers, grade level units, through the types of meetings that they attend, and the types of individuals they interact with in a school. So that's how I developed an axial coding scheme of the kinds of events. How formal are they? How frequent are they? Which units are they associated with? Which school roles attend these meetings? What's the focus of these meetings? And also, through this qualitative data approach, I wasn't really able to tease the direction of interaction in mapping the network, but the strength of ties. So we can measure strength by how often does the PT meet with this particular role at this kind of meeting. So ultimately, to analyze data and to organize it, I built some tables. And I'm still working on these tables, trying to organize sources, evidence, again, trying to analyze types of meetings that the PT is attending, what the foci are, and something that my supervisor is pushing me to do is also to analyze conflict. What kinds of conflict can we see in these kinds of meetings? This is a bit about my research protocol. I'm at the point right now of figuring out which cases to include and which cases not to include. I'm going to share with you two cases that I think contrast well school ecologies and PT roles and their impact in schools. I have not checked my inter-rater reliability. I've been coding, but not checking how reliable my coding is. Now I'm going to share with you two cases. One is of a pedagogical technologist in a small international school in Hong Kong. The other is of a pedagogical technologist in a very, very large private international school in Singapore. They contrast very well because in one school, the pedagogical technologist, the role ultimately becomes extinct. Whereas in this school, the role actually multiplies. And maybe we can find clues as to these outcomes by looking at innovation and the kinds of meetings that these pedagogical technologists attend in the school. Okay, so regarding this small international private school in Hong Kong, and to begin addressing research questions about coevolution, we can see that before the pedagogical technologist became the pedagogical technologist in the school had these kinds of extra-school and intra-school events. But then when the pedagogical technologist actually becomes the pedagogical technologist in the school and starts working, they start having new kinds of meetings. And notice that this pedagogical technologist starts attending these meetings and starts creating these meetings. So PT, one conclusion that we find is PTs create meetings. They actually create new social interaction mechanisms in the school. Now this is a map of the information flow of an innovation in the school. The PT came to this school specifically to introduce an iPad innovation. So at a board meeting, the board decided that they needed iPads. So the principal of the school found this pedagogical technologist outside the school, brought her in, and basically the work of a pedagogical technologist was centered on the interaction between her and the principal. And through her and the principal, they were able to, the PT was able to meet teachers and then maybe go into lessons and introduce innovation. But that was not guaranteed. In the same way, through these meetings with the principal, they were able to organize a parent meeting. In the same way, through these meetings with the principal, the PT was able to meet the school head, the head of school. And then through these kinds of meetings, the principal was able to also go to a prominent educational technology conference and see what other schools are doing. Okay, so now we're seeing strength of ties, and what roles is this PT actually interacting with in the school? We see that the PT in this small private school is interacting primarily with year 4 teachers and students, and with year 2 and kindergarten, but only the teachers. And then there's some minor interaction with the head of school. I need to change this, but with the principal and then with parents. So you can also see who the PT is not interacting with, and that's very, very meaningful. Okay, now I'm going to contrast that with this private international school in Singapore, one of the largest, most prestigious. This pedagogical technologist works there, and the number of PTs in that school increased. And before the PT became the PT in that school, he was a teacher in the school, and they already had a lot of pre-existing meetings. And then when he becomes the PT, he creates several meetings inside of the school. He does not create any new meetings outside of the school. Okay, so now this is a map of one of the innovations that was introduced in the school, and it had to do with iMovie, an iMovie innovation at select grade levels in the school. And we can see that a lot of the meetings actually have a direct influence on lessons, and what happens in the lessons actually has a direct influence on the other kinds of meetings. For instance, Textperts is when two students from each class at grade level become trained in the iMovie innovation. So then they become the iMovie champions in the grade level class. And then there's a feedback mechanism because these students meet every week in Textperts to feedback, but also to learn about the iMovie innovation. Team time is non-contact time for teachers at grade level that happens twice weekly. And the PT meets the teachers at team time to go over the iMovie innovation. So then the teachers go back to their lessons, and then there's a feedback mechanism there. The PT also attends grade curriculum coordinator meetings. So again, teachers at grade level meet in another kind of meeting, and the PT attends that kind of meeting. In addition, the school has a program where each grade level has one teacher champion of an innovation. And so they become the champion for that grade level for the iMovie innovation. And then there are other informal mechanisms. Okay, so we can see that in this particular innovation, with one pedagogical technologist, the PT has a lot of systematic reach through years 3, 4, and 5 because that's where they implemented the innovation. And you take a look at hitting teachers and students, but also specialists as well, heads of grades, other kinds of roles. And then this is another innovation. The following year, they're implementing learning journals. And we can see that there's a similar kind of information flow, but there's obstruction because at the beginning of the year when I was collecting data, they were having residential trips. So students and teachers of each grade level leave the school to go on trips, which means they can't attend Textperts meetings and team time. So that interferes with the implementation and the flow of the learning journal innovation. We see that in the second year, when they have two pedagogical technologists, the reach of the PTs is in fact a lot greater. Now they can cover more grade levels. All right, so what are some of the things that I've found? Well, let's discuss. Okay, when we talk about teaching and learning, and we look at networks of events, the most important event, teaching and learning event in a school is actually the lesson. It's the most numerous, the most frequent, the most regular. It happens every day, again and again and again. So when we actually talk about changing teaching and learning practices in a school, ultimately we're talking about changing what happens in a meeting, a formal regular meeting with teacher and students. Now, what I found in these two cases is having a PT doesn't necessarily mean systemic change in a school. We see that the PT role can become extinct in a school. We see that the survivability of a PT often depends on having other kinds of roles to support the PT. Like an ICT curriculum leader needs an ICT curriculum assistant to survive in a school. So there are other kinds of specialist roles that go alongside a PT role in a school for its survivability. I noticed that there are different kinds of system meetings. So I've shared a few meetings in two different types of private international schools, but the meetings are very, very different. In the school in Singapore, the meetings were systematic. That is, they had the attendees of the meetings were representative of an organizational unit. So like each teacher from each class at each grade level had to attend a meeting. Each student from each class at grade level had to attend a meeting. It wasn't voluntary, it was compulsory. So there was systematic representation, compulsion in attendance. There was also a lot of conflict as well. And this comes with actually having to attend meetings. And in the other school, this private international school in Hong Kong, the meetings were all informal. In fact, just going back to the nomenclature, we can see how informal they are because Hello. They actually had no names. These were just teacher meetings. She met teachers. She met the school head. These were informal because they did not exist before the PT. The PT actually had to create these meetings. They had no name. So that's how informal they were. In contrast, we can see that the PT in this school formalized these meetings to such an extent they actually had a name, a formal name. That's very, very important. Okay, so again, going back to one of the points I mentioned, just having a PT doesn't guarantee that anything in the school is going to change over time, or any kind of change is going to be sustainable. Another way how am I going to say this? This is a part of my continuing data analysis. My supervisor wants me to identify conflict, but also why there's conflict. And in the case of this private international school in Hong Kong, where the PT is trying to introduce an iPad innovation, the school is trying to transition in several ways. And that's why there's so much conflict. The conflict comes from all these conflict points, especially at the organizational level. Okay, so what can we conclude? What are some rules to the complex systems that we're seeing in this school, in this private international school in Hong Kong, private international school in Singapore, and then another case? If we have to have these kinds of binaries about meetings, what can we understand? That it's better to do things together than to do things alone. It's better to have public things, like a public curriculum, than to have a private thing, like a private curriculum. No one else knows how you're developing yourself. No one knows how you're teaching. Compulsory innovation is better than voluntary innovation. And having systematic role participation is better than just random role participation. And these are some of the other kinds of conclusions that I'm making. Thank you.
Nice.
Sure.
Are you looking specifically at like technology, or is it like teaching and learning? Yeah.
I'm looking at a specific role.
The PD role.
Yes. And I'm trying to understand, going back to my research question, how a school changes and how the role changes in the school. And I use this through a network's perspective by seeing, for instance, with the PT role, what kinds of meetings are created. With the PT role, what kinds of interactions are there with different stakeholders. With the PT role, how sustainable are some innovations in the school.
So have you actually come up with a like a model, whether it's a Singapore school or whatever it's what do you think is the best way of like using this role to school? Because I know a lot of like school principals, they actually have a hard time using like a new technology in the school, and how they should like organize themselves in order to embrace all these changes. So I'm just looking for help.
Yes. I'm working on that particular model based on the 3 cases that I developed. And this comes from some of the conclusions that I make. That is, a school actually, in order to sustain a PT role, a school actually has to make a lot of transitions. It's not just adding a role. It's like putting a panda bear in New York City, just dropping it on the street. Just adding the role doesn't necessarily mean that anything's going to change in the school ecology, and doesn't necessarily mean that the role is actually going to survive in a school. A panda bear in New York City is going to die, full stop. You have to change a lot of things about the environment, but also perhaps the species itself, to have a sustainable PT role. Not only that, but to increase its numbers. So in the case where we had this PT in this private international school in Hong Kong, where the PT ultimately left, the school was making a lot of changes at technological levels, interpersonal, organizational levels. It was making a lot of transitions, too many transitions perhaps, for sustainability there. But something that we find, based specifically on case F, is that these are certain rules that govern the complex systems where a PT can survive.
Right. I think the next section.
Sorry, I have one more question. I want to ask about the roles of the PT in the two schools. Is the roles fixed by the school, or there's some government policy or some incentive that the school have the money to give and to incorporate the PT roles?
Okay, good question. I've only found PTs per my delineation of it in private international schools. And these private international schools are largely decentralized from government intervention. So they can raise their own funds. They're very flexible environments, for which reason we actually find the PT role. And again, going back to this idea of complexity theory, it's not that the school imposes a role, it's that the school is changing, but also the PT role is changing at the same time. And we can see that through the kinds of meetings that are created, the kinds of interactions that are created over time. So we can see the roles evolving and the schools evolving. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Paula is going to present now. I'm chairing, sorry, by the way, sorry. Paula is going to present on channeling interactions between local and international students through a blended approach.
Can I give you a should you have a
Excuse me?
contact you?
I will contact you right now.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Right. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
See you.
Unfortunately, time, so I'm going to make it shorter. I'm Paula Hodgson, now working in Hong Kong FSU, and this paper refers to the collaboration between me and two other colleagues. Professor Janelle Curry she's the provost at Gordon University College, and also Lillian Rimo. She's now working in the United International College. One of the common interests that we have is about